Listen up. On the Triggernometry podcast with Patrick Bet-David, they're getting real about why they don't trust the establishment. It's all about peeping behind the curtain and keeping it 100. For the full scoop, hit up the link in the description below.
I've been thinking about a lot, and I don't know what you meant, so tell me what you meant. You said the enemy is real. What did you mean by that?
The enemy is real that's trying to find a way to gaslight, confuse, and divide the people that should get along. They don't want to see us unified. Because once we unify and we realize the enemy isn't as powerful as they think they are, their power comes from a place of facade. Their power comes from a place of convincing you they're stronger than you. And 99% of the time, people fall for that.
But who is it? Who are you talking about?
There's a lot of different directions you can go with this. It's anybody who thinks they know what's best for us, that they don't want to give up the control and the power to guys like us. For example, when we think about currency, we don't just think about, first thing that comes on, currency, the dollar, the euro, the this. No, that's one currency, which is money, right? The other currency is what? Political power, control. The other currency is what? Fame, attention. There's many different currencies that we're dealing with. Okay? The money currency people are what? It's like actually the most honest one. Because it's what? Hey man, I'm making money, don't mess with my money. Simple. But you know that's a very powerful currency. The political one is the darkest one because there is no measurement. At least with money you can say, I'm worth 1.2 billion. I'm worth 600 million. I'm worth 2.8 billion. I'm worth 188 billion. I'm worth 6.8 million. There is an actual way to measure success. Politics, there isn't. How do you measure political success? How do you measure political clout or control or influence? You can't. How do you measure the power of Clinton's? Give me a score on it. There isn't anything like that. How do you measure Soros's political clout that now his son is taking over? Financially, you can say he's worth $7 billion. Financially, you can say he's given $32 billion to whatever Open Society Foundation, whatever those organizations are since the 90s, early 90s. But politically, what is that, right? There's no measurement. So it's darker, deceptive, uglier, control, the country club card that I get to get away with whatever I want to do, impose my power. And then you have the fame part. I still need to be seen. I'm popular, I'm cool when I'm going out there.
The guilty verdict against Donald Trump appears to be backfiring, at least for now, as Donald Trump has reportedly raised over $200 million since they found him guilty. Now, to be fair, about $100 million is coming from various donors. I believe it's estimated that around $55 million is small donors. Dr. Fauci confesses he made up the COVID rules, including 6-foot social distancing. I'm saying that Dr. Fauci proposed rules not knowing whether or not these things would have any impact. People were losing their jobs over this. Kids were forced to do it. It was causing social and learning problems with no evidence. Trust the science, they said. The science they made up on the spot.
Listen up. On the Dan Bongino show, Dan is dropping some real talk about how convicting President Trump might have been the left's biggest L yet. Dan's breaking down the aftermath of the trial and how the left's shooting itself in the foot. For the full story, hit up the link in the description below.
Of course, I'm listening to Fauci. They've got this, hearing going on up on Capitol Hill. And I got to tell you, you almost have to admire in a perverse, tragic way the Democrats' commitment to bullshit and lying. They can't stop. They can't stop. Fauci is up there telling these crazy fairy tales about the Wuhan lab, euphemisms, funding, and the Democrats are all in, man. They are all in on destruction. By the way, Jamal Bowman, the fire alarm guy, with the dumbest human being up in Congress outside of AOC and Dan Goldman, which would make him the third dumbest. So my math may be a little off, but you get the point. Here he is. This is how you know this thing is blown up in their faces. They're going right to the racist card. If you dare criticize Twinkie's Alvin Bragg, check this out.
We as Democrats have to get Alvin Bragg's back. And we need to speak out about that. We need to surround our brother, especially the Congressional Black Caucus and Black Democratic leaders from across this country. We need to surround him because since the very beginning, they were mischaracterizing him, calling him out his name and being racist as hell to Alvin Bragg. And I know I deal with it directly. And the last thing I want to say is, this is why elections matter. I don't want to hear this crap about your vote doesn't matter, I'm gonna stay home and all this nonsense about in November. If you stay home and you do not exercise the power of your vote, you are giving your power to white supremacists.
This rule applies every single time. Gauge your response on their reaction whenever they go to the race card. And listen, if anything was legitimate racism, obviously we call it out because we're actually the party of, constitutional liberties for all, not the bullshit lefties who can't stand black voters. They've always treated black voters like a spreadsheet, always. Just destroyed their credibility, even in the black community. If you haven't heard of this show, you guys know what the Breakfast Club is? Very, very popular morning radio show, podcast. Guy Charlemagne's over there. He's got a crew with him in the morning. Unbelievably popular show. Hugely popular in the black and Hispanic community. Guy's got an amazing audience. I want you to listen to this caller who calls the show. This is blowing up in their face, and it proves my point. People who feel effed over by the system. It's not a black thing. It's not a white thing. It's not a race thing. It's people who feel effed over by the system. That's a lot of people, from people fighting for grazing rights out west to the inner city kid who feels like he's being harassed by the system. It's not a race thing. They found a message in Donald Trump being prosecuted for bullshit. Don't listen to me. Listen to them. Check this out.
Good morning, brother. Peace, TK.
What up, Charlamagne? What up, Jeff?
What up?
What's your thoughts, brother?
Well, I'm going to tell you, man, I feel like Trump's out there dirty. And I don't trust the system at all. You know what I mean? Especially being through the system. I'm the same one that called yesterday about that dog situation. So it's like after you've been railroaded by this system and you see that when you walk in the courtroom, they want you to be guilty. You're going to be guilty. I don't got no trust in that process at all. You know what I mean? I rock with Trump. I feel like that he way better than Biden.
They go, oh, that's just an anecdote. It's just an anecdote. That's just a single subject, just a single person. It doesn't matter. It's all going to wash out in the end. Folks, how many singles? The whole idea of a sample size is a bunch of single subjects starting to add up over time. How many more of these are you going to deny? Let me ask. These stories are everywhere. You show up in the South Bronx and thousands of people show up for Trump. I love that the left is like, no, don't talk. Again, if you're a black voter out there, Biden said it straight. You don't vote for me. You ain't black. You need to go to Biden for your street cred or something, for your entire racial identity is contingent on what Joe Biden, fake Civil Rights Act. The only reason I'm even putting it up now is because it's already outdated. Does data matter to you? Trump campaign raises over $50 million after New York criminal trial verdict. Let's get that out of the show because it's not even relevant. It's now closer to $300 million. Takeaway number one from the show, and don't you forget it, people who donate vote. That's why these donor lists matter. You have to understand the math here. This is a very important tactical point. All electoral math isn't the same, ladies and gentlemen. A vote is not just a vote. And I'm not talking about the cheating. That's a separate topic, obviously, a real one. But I'm talking about for actual votes. A Trump vote that was a Trump vote is kind of a push. A guy who voted for Trump in 2016 and 2020 is a push. It's not a +1 because we're expecting that vote. Got it? Valuable vote nonetheless, but it's kind of a push for us, okay? A Biden voter in 2020 and a Hillary voter in 2016 that stays home because they feel aggrieved by the same system targeting Trump, who's now been martyred by them, is a 0. It's not a +1. They didn't vote for us, but it was a +1 for Biden. So I'll take that push. You want the people who showed up for us, that's a push. You want the people who voted for Biden not to vote for Biden. If they vote for us, then that's a +2. Why? Because they voted for Biden in 2020, Hillary for 2016, and then they voted for us. So it's -1 for Biden, and it's +1 for us, so it's +2 units there. There are going to be 2 narratives going forward. I want you to pay attention so you're ready. 2. The first narrative is you're a racist if you criticize Twinkie's Alvin Bragg. Just obviously disregard that. Double down on your criticism. They tell you not to do something, do it twice. The second narrative is going to be you guys are justice deniers. This is the law and order process. It is no such thing It is a left-wing tyrannical judge with a far-left daughter making a lot of money off left-wing activism in a left-wing state with a left-wing AG and a left-wing DA from a left-wing jury pool with a left-wing Justice Department guy prosecuting the case. None of this is real. It is all fake justice. It is not justice at all. It is bullshit justice. This is what the left wants. Discretionary justice, if you get what I mean. They want this guy so much for dispassionate, hurt or worse. Here, the Democrats, their Committee on Homeland Security, Benny Thompson's the ranking member, introduces legislation to ensure no Secret Service protection for convicted felons. Pick this out. Here's Susan Rice and Joe Biden in a side-by-side about don't you dare question the system. If this guy gets killed in jail, he had it coming, man. It's like Law and Order or something like that. Look, here's the talking points. Reckless and dangerous to question the justice system. Hat tip Mays, check this out.
Proceeding in a fashion that is reckless, dangerous, and irresponsible.
And it's reckless, it's dangerous, it's irresponsible for anyone to say this was rigged.
It's almost like they rehearsed that, folks, because they did. The White House, the Biden White House, the bribing White House, is now admitted in federal court that it altered the transcript of Joe Biden's testimony to special counsel Robert Hur in order for him to appear less incompetent, according to GOP oversight. Court, you remember the Biden transcripts? Biden stole all those classified documents and they said, we can't prosecute him because he's too dumb. Remember that? You know what I'm talking about, right? And remember they released the transcript, but not the tapes. And we were like, on the show, we said, there's a reason they're hiding the tapes. There's a reason. And the likely reason is it makes this guy sound ridiculous or they were altered. It turns out it was both. We need to expose this guy, Biden, for the racist this guy is. You want to play games with Donald Trump? Donald Trump's a racist, George Floyd, whatever you want to play. You want to play these games all the time? That's all you want to talk about, the black voters? Okay. You want to talk about race? Here is Joe Biden eulogizing an actual KKK member who was a member of the U.S. Senate. He was like a grand exalted cyclops. I'm not familiar with the titles, but ask Biden. He seems to know him quite well. Check this out.
As also noted, Robert C. Byrd was a parliamentary library, a keeper of the institution of the Senate, and he was the institution itself. But to me and many people here today, like guys I see, Bill Bradley and Jim Sasser, who've long left the Senate for greener pastures, and I hope better remuneration. We used to kid about that too, but for a lot of us, he was a friend, and he was a mentor, and he was a guide.
He was a friend, folks. He was a friend. Avita just brought up something interesting. They are so afraid of this clip. Folks, I was there. What the hell were you doing? You're criticizing Biden. I was working that day. I was the number one whip that day. Go for you, the election. Here's about a minute of Joe Biden doing racist stuff. He's going to call you a racist, then he got to answer for this. Check this out.
But I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids.
I mean, you got the first sort of mainstream African American who is articulate and bright and clean and nice-looking guy.
Biden recalling his early Senate career, bringing up two segregationist senators, Herman Talmadge and James Eastland, who called African Americans an inferior race. I was in a caucus with James O. Eastland, Biden said. He never called me boy. He always called me son. At least there was some civility. We got things done.
The senators that he is speaking of with such adoration are individuals who made and built their reputation on segregation. The Ku Klux Klan celebrated the election of one of them.
Using the word boy in the way he did can cause hurt and pain, and we need a presidential nominee and the leader of our party to be sensitive to that.
My Democratic colleagues don't like me saying this. I think the two-party system is good for the South and good for the Negro, good for the black. Other than the fact that they still call me boy, I think they've changed their mind a little bit.
As also noted, Robert.
That goes on all day, folks. It goes on all day. Go to RNC Research. That clip's like 8 minutes long. And that's not even all of them.
Though, some major news. President Biden expected this morning to sign an executive order on immigration. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. The Wall Street Journal broke the news just yesterday, so we're going to go ahead and read some of the details. The details are pretty interesting. The executive order, quote, would ban migrants who cross the southern border illegally from claiming asylum. It is a last resort effort to quell voter discontent with his handling of immigration ahead of the presidential election. So the detail, there was a ton of criticism at the time. A lot of Republicans said, we don't need to sign this bill because the president can just do it unilaterally. President Biden said, no, I can't do it unilaterally. And now effectively validating that concern and saying, no, I can do it unilaterally. So anyway, there's, at the very least, he certainly undercut many of the things that he said in the past. I don't think there's any mistaking that this is very obviously a political move and not in response to any sort of policy change.
You know, not only is he a hypocrite because 5 seconds ago he was saying he can't do this on his own, and then he's like, by the way, I'm going to do this on my own.
Said, this is a political move. I mean, the truth is that if you really believed in this so-called cap, then why have you been doing it for 3 years straight? And there's some 8 million people who have come here illegally and just under the Biden administration. That's not my numbers. That's according to the Biden administration's Department of Homeland Security in terms of what that looks like with a multi-year backlog in terms of any of these people ever even possibly getting to asylum court and what the hell that deportation process even looks like if that were to ever occur. All day. What we can at the very least say is the hypocrisy of the Biden administration being flagged, Crystal, as you referenced, by a lot of leftists. Let's put this up there. After years of decrying Trump-era immigration policy, Biden is actually exploiting the same section of U.S. Code 212F that Trump used for the so-called Muslim ban, and now to do the Hispanic migrant ban. So there's quite a bit of crow that's happening, I think, for the Biden administration here, Crystal, as you said, because they decried this as like a crime against humanity, and they exploited it, and they raised all this money and, you know, drug their foot. They reversed everything they possibly could. There's a new Time magazine piece out just this morning where President Biden says that one of his only mistakes on immigration is that he didn't rescind or that he didn't implement more humanitarian measures enough earlier when he was in office. And then at the very same time, I mean, he's basically recopying Trump administration policy on top of also actually funding more border, okay, he won't call it a wall, but border security that happens to translate to a wall along the border. So there's just a lot of doublespeak that's happening right now.
Yeah, when it was Trump, this was fascism. And now Biden's like, I can do fascism too. I mean, you remember he even went to the border and was like, hey, Trump, let's like work together. How about we do your fascist border policy that 5 seconds ago I was decrying? And now here he is using the very same tactics.
All right, check it out. On the PBD podcast, the team dives into some hot topics. Elon Musk's got beef with Tesla's investors, but he might be squashing it with Jamie Dimon. Mexico's peso taking a hit, and the WNBA's got some drama on the court. But hold up, things get real with shocking claims from Rolling Stones about Shawn Diddy Combs, and Fauci's confessing about social distancing and masking kids. Plus, there's some intense clashes between pro-Palestine protesters in a pride parade, and Alex Jones is declaring war against the government. It's a wild ride. For the full scoop, hit up the link in the description below.
Well, Elon Musk is mad at one of Tesla's biggest investors for saying it's voting against his pay package. So now you guys got to keep this in mind. He negotiated this in February of 2018 is when he negotiated this, and they're still not willing to pay him the $56 billion that's owed to him. Let me read it. When he negotiated this, it was February of 2018. When he negotiated in February 2018, guess what they did? The Tesla stock shareholders sent a letter out saying, we just negotiated Musk's compensation for the next 6 years, okay? And when they negotiated compensation for the next 6 years, they said, we have gotten Elon Musk to agree to take zero salary for the next 6 years, zero pay for the next 6 years. Then the board had to come back and say, California forced us that we have to pay minimum wage. You know, Elon Musk has been getting paid minimum wage the last 6 years. $37,000 is what he's been getting paid, and he's never taken the money. Now, check this out. At the time when he agreed, this is what the terms were. Tesla was worth around $55 billion. In order for him to get his full compensation package, he had to take Tesla from $55 billion in 6 years to $650 billion valuation. And if you don't take us to $11 billion, you get paid nothing. That's what he negotiated for. At the time when he negotiated this contract, you know what was the craziest thing when he negotiated it? At the time, guess what was the shortest stock? The stock being shorted the most in all of NASDAQ 100. Tesla. You know what percentage of the stock was shorted? 22.6% at a time when the average shorted stock on NASDAQ 100 was 3.5%. So 73% agreed to this. Guess what percentage agreed at the beginning that we should pay this? Because this guy's never going to hit 11 times valuation. 100%. Yeah. Now it's 73%. 27% is like, oh, shit, he actually hit it. That's true. Elon Musk and Jamie Dimon are getting close. What? Elon Musk. It looks like Elon Musk and Jamie Dimon are one step closer to making peace amid their nearly 10-year feud. Elon Musk and Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase have been working to mend their 10-year feud, with their relationship improving since March when they spoke for an hour on stage at a JP Morgan Technology Summit, and Musk visited Dimon's suite. The feud began in 2016 when JP Morgan stopped underwriting Tesla car leases, leading to a heated exchange where Musk cursed and threatened to pull business, and Dimon responded that his bank wouldn't be bullied. Musk subsequently favored Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley for his ventures. Despite their legal battles, including JP Morgan's 2021 lawsuit against Tesla over $162 million contract breach, Dimon now considers re-engagement with Musk's businesses, seeing mutual benefits in accessing funds and advisory services from the biggest U.S. bank. Mexico peso drops as much as 4.1% against the dollar, and the local stock market fell over 2% following the rule of Morena Party's strong election performance, raising fears of potential constitutional changes that could undermine checks and balances. The peso later trimmed its losses to 3.2% drop. Claudine Sheinbaum, landslide presidential victory, and Morena's gains surprised markets, with Chris Turner from ING noting concerns about Morena potentially pursuing market non-friendly policies of constitutional reform. Sheinbaum secured between 58.3 to 60.7 and 60.7 of the vote, and the highest Mexico majority history. Despite market jitters, Sheinbaum's acceptance speech aimed to reassure markets by emphasizing a commitment to an autonomous central bank, maintaining the division between economic and political powers, and persevering a disciplined fiscal stance, as noted by JP Morgan. Ricky.
This is why the system that we have in the United States is so important. Congress and Senate. What happens whenever you hear the phrase coalition government, you say he's been elected prime minister and now he's going to go build the coalition government. Well, the coalition government often means, and this is exactly what Vinny just said, let's say this happens, that we've got three parties: independents, Republicans, and Democrats. And the independents, let's just call them 20%. So the Republican wins, let's say 51%. If he gets the coalition with the independents and it gives him 70%, above 2/3, they don't even need to ask the Democrats to vote. They get to do whatever they want. And that is what's happened here.
They don't have to they can't filibuster.
Obrador has given her, he says, listen, I want these 5 things. You give me these 5 things. She says, okay, I'll give them to you. Okay. Then I'll pledge my votes to you. And now he has over 66%, which is 2/3. At 70%, she can change the Constitution because he has given her the votes to do it. There's no more debate on the floor. When they say she has a blank check, she now has over 66% to go change it. That's a coalition government that is common in places not named the United States.
Fauci had a wonderful Monday, guys. If you're wondering who had a great Monday, Fauci had a very fantastic, emotional, being asked a bunch of different questions.
You represent science, Mr. Fauci?
I am a scientist who uses the scientific method to gain information.
Yes or no?
No, that's not a yes or no answer.
Yes, it's a yes or no.
I don't think it is.
Okay, well, we'll take that as a you don't know what you represent. You confess that you made up the COVID rules, including
I didn't hear what you
6 feet social distancing and masking of children.
I never said I made anything up.
You admitted that you made it up. You made it up as you went.
I made it up.
So are you saying this is fake news, Mr. Fauci?
I didn't say I made anything up.
What did you say?
I said that it is not based in science and it just appeared.
But you also told the American people they had to distance by 6 feet. They had to wear masks. Do you think that's appropriate? Do the American people deserve to be abused like that, Mr. Fauci? Because you're not doctor. You're Mr. Fauci in my 2 minutes. That man does not deserve to have a license.
Watch what happens here.
As a matter of fact, it should be revoked, and he belongs in prison.
Suspend.
This was a time in history where you got to throw out the first pitch at the Washington Nationals baseball game while Americans were forced to stay home and watch such events that they love from at home alone on their televisions. And what a hypocrisy this picture shows. Here you are without your mask, with empty seats everywhere. Remember the cardboard cutout fans? That was one of the most insulting things to Americans, having to watch the games from home where you got to go and enjoy the game and sit right next to people not following the 6 feet of distancing, not wearing your mask, and everyone else was forced to stay home and stop enjoying life. And your science here, your science is displayed perfectly in this picture where children in school were put in plastic bubbles because of your science. Your repulsive, evil science. And let's go back to your very own email. You said earlier you don't use email. Oh, you do. Right here. This is your own email where you said the typical mask you buy in the drugstore is not really effective in keeping out virus. I do not recommend that you wear a mask. This is your email. This is your own words. But yet children all over America were forced to wear masks. Healthy children forced to wear masks, muzzled in their schools. And then they were forced to learn from home because of your so-called science and your medical suggestions, while you and all your cronies get paid from Big Pharma. You know what this committee should be doing? We should be recommending you to be prosecuted. We should be writing a criminal referral because you should be prosecuted for crimes against humanity. You belong in prison.
You said in an interview that you gave as part of an audiobook written by Michael Spector that you believed an institutional should make it hard for people to live their lives so they'd feel pressured to get vaccinated. Could we run the audio clip on that, please?
You think can be done about it. I have to say that I don't see a big solution other than some sort of mandatory vaccination. I know federal officials don't like to use that term.
Once people feel empowered and protected legally, you are going to have schools, universities, and colleges are going to say, you want to come to this college, buddy? You're going to get vaccinated. Lady, you're going to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Big corporations like Amazon and Facebook and all of those others are going to say, you want to work for us, you get vaccinated. And it's been proven that when you make it difficult for people in their lives, they lose their ideological bullshit.
Only politicians, only bloggers, only conspiracy theorists are disagreeing with you. I want to point out that I'm probably the only member of Congress that actually treated patients during the pandemic from the very beginning to the very end of the pandemic, during night shifts in the ER. Thousands of patients during that time. And in 2020, I was censored. My medical license was threatened because I disagreed with bureaucrats. Literally taken off the internet as a person who is treating patients with leading edge technologies,
True believer.
Developing theories, but doing my very best, but being censored by the United States government for the first time, stepping in and taking the place of medical professionals as the experts in healthcare. Any dissent surrounding COVID-19 treatments, mask mandates, and any public policy surrounding the pandemic was immediately labeled as anti-science. I watched as public health officials and politicians told my patients what treatment options were best for them, regardless of their comorbidities or their medical history. Despite my education and my training and my experience, my opinions were relegated to conspiracy and misinformation by so-called healthcare experts who had never treated a patient throughout the entire pandemic. This has been a black eye on the medicine and has highlighted why government should never insert itself in between patients and their healthcare providers. The American people deserve to make medical decisions through conversations with their physicians rather than politically motivated mandates. Dr. Fauci, did you ever treat a patient for COVID during the pandemic?
I was part of a team that was at the NIH that took care. We didn't take care of many of them.
Okay, so not hands-on. Got it. Thank you. Why would I be criticized by a bureaucrat for doing my very best as a healthcare? This is a rhetorical question. But why? Why would the government, who's never treated a patient for COVID,
you can tell.
You can read all the things you want, but you're not there. You're not seeing patients. You're not watching people die, intubating patients right there with that disease in your face, watching it happen, watching the development of this disease and actually learning from it. But I'm being told by bureaucrats what's right and wrong. And what's funny is everything I was censored on, I was proven to be right.
Polarization and the politicization of science. Just look where we're at in the country. Just look at the ratings for Fauci. 85% of Democrats approve of the job Fauci did. Just 19% of Republicans. That was back in 2022. So if you just want to see what he hasn't been relevant since basically COVID, quote unquote, ended. But just look at the polarization there. There's a group on one side that is like, no, he did it. He did a great job. He saved lives. And there's the other group of people who are basically like, this guy's a criminal, dangerous bureaucrat in the history of the country. Bureaucrat, why? Because he's not elected, okay? Rand Paul called him the dictator-in-chief. DeSantis, the little elf that should have been kicked off the Potomac.
Which side was part of censoring, left or right?
It's not even a question. It was the left.
Which side was about forcing people to take the vaccine?
It's not even a question. It was the
Which
left.
side was the one that prevented kids from going to school and titled people unessential,
You're
whatever?
absolutely
essential?
right.
Which side was the one that told people, hey, if you don't take it, let them die. I don't care. Jimmy Fallon. Which side?
Jimmy Kimmel.
So Jimmy Kimmel. So when you go through this,
horrible. You're right.
What do you put on the right? The only thing you get on the right side is when Trump created warp speed and Pfizer announced, whether it was Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson & Johnson, that the vaccine is ready. They did it 2 days after the election was over to make sure that victory didn't go to him. And Kamala Harris said, I would never take a vaccine that's coming out this close. And then they started. Everything on the hypocrisy goes on this side.
All right, listen up. On the Shawn Ryan Show, they got none other than Tucker Carlson in the house. You know him, American journalist, commentator, and the mastermind behind the Tucker Carlson Network. From his days on Tucker Carlson Tonight to his mission with the Tucker Carlson Network, this dude's been shaking up the media game. Carlson ain't afraid to speak his mind and challenge the status quo. He's all about giving voice to alternative viewpoints and exposing the truth that mainstream media tries to hide. With his team, they pull no punches, aiming to empower viewers to see beyond the usual narratives. So if you want to dive deep into the real talk with Tucker, hit up the link in the description below for the full context.
In the last few years, it's become clear to me that the categories that I thought were real are not, and that it really is a contest, in fact, a war between the truth and deception. And so I believe, I don't always know what the truth is, and I've certainly repeated a lot of things that were lies, mostly unintentionally. I try not to lie. I have lied, but I try not to. But I've certainly said a ton of things that were wrong. But I am trying to tell the truth. I am. Not the whole truth all the time. You don't have to say everything you think. You shouldn't, but you can't lie. And I think that people can feel that. It's what I know when someone's lying to me. I don't always know what he's lying about or why he's lying, but I can smell deception, as we all can from our instincts, instantly. And I don't have any special powers of any kind. I don't have a crazy high IQ, or I really don't have that many skills, but I would say my main skill is I believe my instincts. Like, I don't think they lie to me. They're not trying to sell me something. They're not trying to get elected. They're there to serve me. I really believe that. That's true of all people and animals. I love animals, so I see this at work in animals as well. And I don't hesitate to follow my instincts. So again, I don't always know what those instincts mean. As I say to my children, they are unerring, but imprecise. Like, they're absolutely real 100% of the time. The question is, how do you interpret them? And I was like a very non-ideal person. I mean, I'm like kind of an asshole now. I was really an asshole then, like actual. It's like super arrogant, dumb, doing drugs, just being like a complete overbearing jerk. Arrogant, really arrogant. And which is my nature. I try to fight it. But
you mentioned you're into drugs. You're 22 years sober. Congratulations.
Yeah.
What was it that got you sober? Was it a scare? Did you hit rock bottom?
I didn't really. I mean, I was hosting Crossfire actually at the time. And so I had been successful, young, and it wasn't really drugs. I mean, I was not I did a lot of drugs, but that's just because of the world that I was in. Like that was not, it's embarrassing to say it now because drugs are so clearly bad, like really bad. And all these people now die of drugs. And that was not the case when I was a kid. Like drug addicts died of drugs. Like, junkies died of overdoses, but like no one you'd ever know would ever die of drugs. At this point, I know a lot of people who died of drugs. So it's a different landscape. It's a different attitude now. So it's embarrassing to say that, but I was not a drug addict. I just was like into adventure and experimenting with stuff. And the world I was in, that was pretty much acceptable. I hate to say it, but it was true. That's just true. So same with cigarette smoking. Cigarette smoking was encouraged. So it was a different time. But it wasn't the drugs. It was that, though, like some drugs really wear you out, like cocaine. Not good. And hard to live a productive life if you're like going to bed at 7 a.m. or whatever, which I didn't do a ton, but some. But it was booze. That is what got me. And it was just, just progressive. I was 33. I was fairly functional. I did a daily TV show and was fairly well known, kind of famous actually at that point. And so, kind of killing it. But I do think the physiology of it, which I don't understand really, but if that's real, like your body responds to alcohol differently as you age. And I would start to get these hangovers that were debilitating. And then I'm busy. I've got a lot of children. I've got stuff to do. And I would just like not hesitate to have a cocktail or 3 a.m. I just wouldn't. I'm just like a no dicking around kind of guy, I guess. And I don't feel good. So like, well, there's a screwdriver for that. Right. And someone taught me about scotch. I knew nothing about scotch. I was always a bourbon guy or whatever. But I sat and drank a quart of scotch with a friend of mine. He's like, scotch is really good. Just drink a quart of it. So we did. We're up in Maine. It didn't matter. It was in the summertime. But then I got back to Washington in late August or mid-August. And, I have this job. And then I get home from the job. It's like, click, click. Well, I'll try some scotch. And the next thing you know, you're like shit-faced at home. And part of me was like, that's not good. And I had a couple of moments where I lost control. One actually at the White House Christmas party in 2001. I got too drunk to talk and stuff like that. It's just embarrassing. But I woke up this one morning at the last day of August 2002, and my wife was 10 days away from giving birth to our 4th child. And I was sitting at my desk, like smoking a cigarette at home, feeling bad. And I just heard this voice. I don't know if it was a voice. It was from God. And it was the clearest possible instruction. If you keep doing this, you will lose your wife and children. And I haven't always been a great husband or father, but I've always wanted to be. I've always really cared a lot. And it's easy to care about people who are, loving and fun to be with, as my family is. So it's not hard, but I have always cared a lot. And I just had this dead certainty that if I kept on this path, I would lose my wife and children. No one had complained about my drinking.
You heard it.
I was sitting at my desk smoking a Camel Unfiltered. I'll never forget it, looking out my window at my lawn and feeling just like enervated and crappy and cloudy as you do when you're hungover. And I just had this feeling and I was like, wow, I think I'm an alcoholic. I had lost control. I'm leaving a few things out, nothing dramatic, but I didn't crash a car. But I blacked out a couple of times, which I didn't know what that was, like actually black out. I always hear people say that, but like I didn't remember how I got home from a restaurant, for example, with my college roommate, or I had a friend over, another college roommate that summer, wonderful guy, his wife and children, just a beautiful family and beautiful people, great people, like not people you'd want to be like snarfing drunk in front of. And I remember sitting in my backyard in Washington and making gin and tonics. I'm quite a good gin and tonic maker. But it's the kind of thing you want to have a couple cocktails with your buddy and his wonderful wife, and they're just really great people. And next thing I know, I'm like shit-faced. I'm like, I didn't really actually want to be shit-faced. I can't believe I got shit. Like, what is that? I was losing control. This is all very... And then some other stuff like that, or I stayed, I had a friend in town and he's like, let's do a couple lines. And next thing I know, it's like 7 a.m. and I'm like, what? I can't do this shit. Anyway, the bottom line is I quit. I never had another drink after that. And I went into like, not medically serious, but for me, pretty serious withdrawals. And that I was like, what? I'm having alcohol withdrawals? I knew nothing about this, okay? I didn't know that there were alcohol withdrawals. Like I just didn't know. You'd think because of my mother, I would know this, but I didn't know anything. And my brother was, a problem drinker also. But I didn't think of myself as a problem drinker. I was like, well, my brother's out of control. He later quit too. But when I started to go into withdrawals from alcohol, like shaking hands, can't sleep, sweating a lot, and I have to host this TV show, and I'm like, I was addicted to alcohol. Holy smokes. Like, how did I not know that? And then, so I never drank again. And unlike most people who quit, or many people who quit, I've never wanted to drink again. I just never, once I got past like the first 6 months, I just felt so much better. I was so grateful. I'm so great. I've enjoyed being sober a lot. You can never tolerate is flattery, ever. That is an absolute threat to you. Any ass kissing is a threat to you. It's better to get punched in the face than be flattered. Because there's no good motive for that. Someone's lying right to your face in the stealthiest, most feline way. Oh, you're so great. Oh, you're so great. You're so great. If anyone says anything like that to me ever, no, you're done.
Good for you.
Well, no, it's just purely, and luckily I come from a family where compliments are just not a thing. Like, love is a thing. I love you is a thing. Honesty is a thing, but ass kissing is not a thing.
Yeah. And when did you kind of notice the weaponization of mainstream media start to happen?
I mean, it's like you're too close to things, you don't get it at all. I didn't realize how totally corrupt, that there is no ideal at the center of it that in any conceivable way benefits the public's interest, democracy, any of that. Informing the public so they can make informed decisions on who to vote for. Like, that is the last thing from anyone's mind. And it's actually the most corrupt institution in the United States by far. What do I know? It's the only one I've worked in. But I can say it's fundamentally corrupt. Like, there's no non-corrupt part, period. Well, not only was the media, which is a source of all of our information, degrading and becoming not only more corrupt, but more obviously corrupt, but our educational system was completely collapsed. The humanities collapsed. There's no education, like none. That's not an overstatement. I have a lot of children. They have a lot of friends. I have young people who work for me. No one learns anything in college, like at all. It's only in the humanities. I'm sure electrical engineering is different. Veterinary school is different, but in the sort of broad middle of like, I'm going to take English, history, communications, media study, all this, it's all fake. Like, there's a hunger to learn. There's a hunger not to be lied to. People can tell when they don't know exactly what the truth is. I have no idea exactly what the truth is about anything. But I know the direction it's coming from, and I definitely know lying. And there's a natural human desire not to be lied to. And to, what is that? To understand things. Curiosity is a human thing. Curiosity died in the media. They're now officially opposed to curiosity. Just asking questions is a crime. In fact, it's my crime, I have noticed. Just asking questions. Oh, what? I will never be embarrassed to ask questions. Like, sorry, you can't make me embarrassed of asking questions.
Yeah.
My motive is irrelevant, by the way. My motive happens to be fairly pure. I am interested, but even if my motive was sinister, it doesn't change the fact of it that answering questions is never bad. Period. Whatever. But as the mainstream media, the big media companies were becoming like just arms of the government and just like full North Korea media landscape. Like, no one knows anything. It's all lies. That is where we are. I can say that with great authority, having worked there my whole life. There was this incredible renaissance happening in the most unlikely of mediums, this podcast. And not just about politics, but about history. It's incredible. I mean, there's no way if you go to Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, where I went, not an impressive place. But even if you go to, pick a school, Dartmouth, probably not going to learn that much about legitimate history. You can learn it instantly in podcasts, and millions of people are. You learn about the fall of Rome, 470. What happened? Why did that happen? Or just the details, the Punic Wars. Name it. It's on there.
Yeah.
And then that is the world headquarters of free thinking and honesty. Man, of all the trends, and again, this is right in my world. This is media. That's my world. Of all the trends in the last 30 years, that is the last one I would have predicted and the most hopeful. It's incredible. Like Esquire, where I used to write, or New York Times Magazine, they thought that was really impressive. It's not impressive at all. No one reads that crap. No one believes it. The people who do, you don't care about because they're dumb by definition. They read the New York Times and believe it. What? I never done podcasts. So the last year I've done all these podcasts and I loved it. it was like so fun. And it was fun because it's exactly how I grew up. Like, this is like the most natural thing. This is how I grew up. This is what we did for entertainment. Sit around the table and talk about what you think and what you've read and be as honest as you can be. Like, I hate to say this, I guess I'm not allowed to say this, but one of the beauties of growing up, as a young child with like no women in the house, you can say whatever you want. There's no one to offend. You know what I mean? It's like how I grew up. So you say whatever you want. And you can be as honest as you want. Like, there's just dudes. It's like, what, are you going to offend your dad? No, probably not. What hasn't he seen? Are you going to offend your little brother? Who cares? You can just really be honest. And I love that. It's like the happiest times of my life. And our family is that way. And we have exceedingly long dinners. We play games at the end. It's just fun. And everyone can say exactly what they think. Like, I've always lived that way at home. So a podcast is like not different from that, really. Yeah. It's true of everything that remains hidden from us. What could possibly be the pretext for hiding what our government is doing, if it is in fact our government? If this is an exercise in self-government, if this is whatever you want to call it, constitutional republic, democracy, whatever, if the people rule, what possible justification could you have from hiding something from me? Because it's my government. Well, of course, the answer is because it's not your government. It belongs to the people who run it. The organization exists for its own sake, not for yours. You just pay for it.
I feel like we're being pushed into civil war.
Yes. Oh, of course.
Who do you think is pushing? I mean,
it's all on instinct.
With the weaponization of media, social media, bots. I mean, all this, all the lies in the division. I mean,
of course.
Who do you think is pushing it? Or are we already in it?
Well, we're already in it. We're in definitely an undeclared conflict. It's a conflict, of course. This were happening in another country, you would see this was, strife of some kind. I mean, who knows what to call it? But of course, I mean, it's the oldest. It is a strategy. I don't think it's ever fully articulated anywhere by anybody, but it's a conspiracy of like-minded instincts, as I noted at the beginning. People from the same class, the beneficiaries of our current system, understand what people all understand intuitively, which is divide and conquer. Like, fight amongst yourselves. Hey, white guy, it's the black guy's fault. Black guy, the white guy is impressing you, or whatever. Racism is America's biggest problem. Right, okay. Racism is not America's biggest problem. That's for sure. The Israel protests. The biggest thing happening in America is a fight in a faraway country. Huh? No. Over 100,000 people just died of fentanyl this year. Like, what? I'm not even taking position on the Israel thing. I'm coming at this from very limited interest, actually, and I'm not against Israel. I like nice country to visit. I wish everybody well, just in general, I do. I want to, try to. But if you're telling me that conflict is the biggest thing happening in my country, fuck you, actually, because no, it's not. And that doesn't make me pro-Hamas or anti-Israel or pro-Israel or it doesn't even matter. Like, I'm American. Like, what? So if you're filling up my airwaves in my brain with that, first of all, you're not serving my interest because you're not telling me about what's happening in my own country, in my own family. And second, you're very likely trying to divert my attention, mislead me, scramble my priorities. It cannot be my top priority because I'm not from that country. My top priority is my family in this country. And my family's been here hundreds of years. I think I have a right to say that, okay? And you're trying to scramble my priorities. You're trying to make me think that something that's not the most important thing is the most important thing. And why are you trying to do that? And, we can only guess, but it's bad. It's sinister. That is absolutely sinister. And I bear no anger toward transvestites or transsexuals or whatever we're calling them at all. I feel no anger at all. I feel sadness. And I actually don't even feel that much. Other people's weirdnesses have never bothered me because I grew up in a weird world. But I know my reaction the first time somebody told me that a man can become a woman, I was like, that's fucking crazy. No, it's like that actually can't happen. It's not factually true. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of people, some of whom I know, who were like, yeah, that can happen. So why did they think that? And I thought what I thought, because we have different instincts, actually. Now, who knows? And people have a very specific gut reaction, which, and I think across the board, is destructive. Let's destroy something. Those people are in charge. Let's break it. Whether it's Ukraine or whatever, they're into breaking things. For some reason, we went up with this leadership class. It's all about breaking shit. Let's just get rid of it. Let's just break it. And so people with this weird and destructive instinct, that's what it is. It's not a conspiracy, it's an instinct, have taken over all the levers of power.
All right, check it out. On the Flagrant podcast, they got UFC's very own Dana White in the building, and he's spilling all the beans. From how the UFC started to his biggest wins and losses in gambling, they cover it all. They're diving deep into Dana's journey from running gyms with Roger Mayweather to the early days of UFC. They talk about the hustle, the setbacks, and the moments that changed everything. Plus, Dana gets real about the fight game, media misconceptions, and what truly makes a UFC fight worth watching. From the Ultimate Fighter to Conor McGregor's mind games, they leave no stone unturned. And let me tell you, Dana ain't holding back when it comes to sharing his stories about the fight world and the wild ride of building the UFC empire. So if you want to indulge in some real talk with Dana White, hit up the link in the description below for the full context.
There's a really cool story about you that I think that has been confirmed, but it was told by a mutual friend. And it was about when Rogan was going through one of his like many cancellations. And, maybe some people at the network were like, I think we got to set this guy aside. And what I heard was that you said, if he goes, I go.
Yeah. When Rogan was going through his thing, it was at the peak of this cancel culture shit going on, right? And I was like, yeah, fuck that shit. And this is the fucking fear factor guy. You know what I mean? Yeah. And the way that Joe talked and how passionate he was, I go, this is the fucking guy that I need. This is the fucking guy. It just hit me, right? So I reach out to Rogan and we start going back and forth. And I said, I would love you to come in and be one of the commentators. And Rogan's attitude was, so wait a minute. So you're saying I can come over there, sit in the best seats in the house and watch the sport that I love for fucking free?
Yeah.
I'm in. So at the time, financially, we were getting fucking murdered. Rogan did the first 12 or 13 shows for free. Yeah. And that began the relationship with me and Joe Rogan that now has been, coming up on 20-something years.
Okay,
and
so
you think that you're going to fucking cancel Joe Rogan and you're going to, and I'm going to just say, okay?
Yeah.
No, I will fucking quit.
Yeah.
This job and leave and go do something else before you're going to try to fucking.
I loved it.
And the whole cancel thing, I just literally talked about this a couple days ago with, if you're in the right place in your life and who the fuck's going to cancel you?
Yeah.
Yeah. The only ones that can really cancel you are your fucking family and your friends.
Yeah.
Fuck all these other people.
Yeah. The strangers you never see in your life.
Who gives a shit what any of these fucking people think? But we were talking about a deal with a group of people who are, they make shitloads of money, but they're looked down upon, okay?
Yeah.
And
Jews?
I was talking to them about a deal.
Yeah.
Right? And the guy who's one of the big guys in the company called me back and said, we talked to our board of directors and I'm already out.
You're asking permission.
You're
asking permission.
If you have a fucking board of directors,
why am I talking to you?
It's just like, I've dealt with that shit before.
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
And your board of fucking directors.
Yeah.
That's the shit that's fucking, you get a group of fucking uppity douchebags in a fucking room that are going to determine the way that something goes or how you're going to do business or who you're going to do business with or something that's going to go on. You already lost me. So he didn't want to do this thing, but he wants to do a few other things with me. We're going to do nothing together.
Because you're going to have to deal with that.
We're going to do nothing together.
I'm not doing the bureaucracy,
Talk to your fucking board of directors.
Yeah.
You guys are already a fucking pussy company that I don't even want to fucking.
Here's a question I've been thinking this whole time. What is it about you that you think, number one thing that makes you so successful about you? Like, what is it I felt like listening to this other podcast, I'm like, maybe he understands human nature in a way that's very deep. But I want to just ask you, what do you think it is that's made you so successful?
I don't know. Listen, I get up every day and I work hard. I mean, that's that.
A lot of people work hard, man.
Yeah, but I believe in. I guess if you look at all the things that go on in the outside world and all the people that tell you what you can't do and what's not possible, I've built a team of people that I have got on board with me that agree with me and say, there's nothing we can't fucking do. You know what I mean? And when you build a fucking team of can-dos instead of can't-dos, like the Sphere, right? I said we could fucking do this, and I think this is going to be fun, challenging, and an experience that we will all look back on in 10 years and go, we fucking did that, and we were.
Check it out. We have another round this week on the Triggernometry podcast, and they're bringing in none other than Tulsi Gabbard. She's not just any politician. She's a United States Army Reserve officer and former Democratic presidential candidate. But hold up, she switched lanes and gone independent, breaking away from the Democratic Party. From representing Hawaii's 2nd Congressional District to dropping a New York Times bestseller, Tulsi's making moves and speaking her truth. So if you want to hear what she's got to say, hit up the link in the description below for the full context.
But while I was there at the convention, I was surprised because there were people, oh, Tulsi Gabbard, she's the rising star of the Democratic Party and all of this stuff. In hindsight, looking back, it was like, okay, well, I checked a lot of the, kind of the identity politics boxes.
You think it was about diversity? That?
Yes. They thought that I was going to be someone who was drawn into kind of the red carpet that they laid out before me and would allow myself to be a puppet or allow myself to just be someone who will follow the talking points and kind of cheer the rah-rah lines that everybody uses, but very quickly found even within the first 6 months of my being in Congress back in 2013 that was not the case. They want control and they want power. That is what drives them and that's what motivates them, even at the cost of undermining the Constitution and taking away basic fundamental freedoms like freedom of speech and freedom of expression. They want to be able to control who has a voice and who doesn't. And they have increasingly escalated their the tools that they are using in order to meet that end. But I thought at least in this democratic republic, at a minimum, I will have just as fair a shot as anyone on that debate stage to make my case to the American people and allow them to do what we do, what we're supposed to do in this country. They will get to make the decision. That's it. That I discovered that to be a false assumption the day I announced my candidacy. The very day I announced my candidacy, as I was walking up on the stage to make that announcement in Hawaii, NBCnews.com put out a smear piece on me, started planting the seeds of suspicion and doubt, like, oh, there's something weird going on with Tulsi Gabbard. The Russians are really interested in her. And this, of course, became something that was a common refrain, not only for me, with Hillary Clinton and many others calling me essentially a traitor to my country, a Russian asset, but it's something, it is a tried and true playbook that they continue to turn to. Obviously, they did it with Donald Trump in 2016. They do it with Tucker Carlson. They do it with Bobby Kennedy. They do it with anyone who they deem as a political threat. Not only limiting the exposure of different Democratic candidates to voters through limited time on the debate stage, but actually working in a concerted way with big tech and the big mainstream propaganda media to control what information voters saw about the candidates that were running in that election, really revealing in real time. You talk about a rigged system. This is what a rigged system looks like. You can say, well, voters are the ones who make this decision. But you've got to understand the context with which they're making that decision. If the information that they're getting when they type in who is Tulsi Gabbard and Google decides to push certain information that is less than flattering at best, but complete false accusations and smears, which is what they did, then, they're tilting the scales. Is how and why allowing President Biden and the Democrat elite to remain in power will result in the further erosion of our freedom and the loss of what we know and love about America. We've seen such a brazen abuse of power coming from this administration, weaponizing the Department of Justice, undermining the rule of law, interfering with our democracy, trying to limit who we're able to vote for in this election. There are so many different examples at this point that if they're allowed to remain in power and are reelected in in November of this year, they will only continue to rapidly escalate what they're doing, because they will run around the country saying, hey, you as voters have given us a mandate. You've told us that we are obviously doing a good job, and we're going to continue to do this. And censorship, an undermining of free speech, these types of things will only continue and get worse. If you compare the record of President Biden and President Trump on key issues that are directly impacting us in America today, there's not much like gray area where there's overlap between the two of them. When you look at issues like border security, when you look at things like we were talking about this a little bit earlier about Title IX and how Title IX was created in America to make sure that women and girls have a level playing field in sports and in education. President Biden completely destroyed Title IX through a backdoor rule change. Didn't even go through Congress. It was passed into law by Congress over 50 years ago. If he and his administration wanted to change it, as they do, to include transgender, which completely takes away equal opportunity and a level playing field for women and girls, they should have made the case to the American people and done it through Congress. That's the way our system of governance is set up. Instead, they backdoored this through a rule change that has now made it so that little girls will be forced into a bathroom with little boys who say, well, I'm a girl now. If you look at our education system as a whole, if you look at our economy, if you look at what's happening on the foreign policy front, there are clear distinctions between the record of Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
I quite agree with you. And for somebody who is not an American, to see Joe Biden speaking, look, some people, people make jokes. I personally find it terrifying. This is the most powerful country in the world. We are in a period with ever greater instability when it comes to geopolitics, and you've got a man who seems unable to string a sentence together. I fail to see the humor in that, and I find it profoundly worrying.
I am also extremely worried. Well, what if, maybe Joe Biden gets replaced, whether it's by Kamala Harris, or maybe he drops out at the last minute at the convention, they bring in somebody completely different and new. My point to voters as I travel and I speak to people is don't allow yourself to be distracted by that, because ultimately Kamala Harris arguably would be even worse and more dangerous than Joe Biden. But whoever they would put in place there would continue the very same anti-freedom, anti-constitution policies that they have executed. I find her to be wholly unprepared and incapable of doing the job. I have zero trust and confidence in her ability to lead our country. I have zero confidence in her ability to be the vice president. She's not delivered in any of the areas that she has been tasked with, foremost among them, border security. To see Kamala Harris as commander-in-chief would guarantee that we would end up in at least one, if not many, wars that are counter to our country's interest and counter to the interest of just peace and prosperity in the world, because she and people like her will feel the need to prove her strength. And if you're the commander-in-chief and you're Kamala Harris, the way that she would do that is by, well, let's go and knee-jerk reaction, go and drop bombs on this other country. Use our military, my brothers and sisters in uniform, us, to be that show of strength.
But do you think that she's a diversity hire, that they put her there because they wanted to show, this is a woman of color, and the Democrat Party believes in, putting forward people regardless of race, gender, ethnicity, because this is a new America? Do you think she was there?
I was, obviously I wasn't privy to any of those conversations, but if I remember correctly, Joe Biden himself said that he would absolutely only choose a woman, and then I think that was narrowed down to he would only choose a black woman.
I like progress. Progress is good, right? I think we all like progress. Yeah. You said Joe Biden talks about how his administration is the most progressive administration in history. And I instinctively inside went, because progress now means hating men, hating white people, picking people on the basis of their skin color, exactly the opposite of Martin Luther King, his dream. Men can be women.
It's the opposite of progress. It's literally the opposite.
How did this happen? How are we here?
It's people in leadership positions who operate from a place of fear rather than a place of strength that is grounded in the founding principles of our country and the examples that have been set forward by people like Martin Luther King. And they're so afraid of being labeled by the fringe activists, the so-called woke activists within the Democratic Party, that, and especially over these last few years, especially since 2016, when, it wasn't called it back then, but this whole Trump derangement syndrome caused otherwise, sensible, thoughtful people to just throw reason out the window. The Democrat elite are who I hold responsible for their policies, because they are either the ones creating the policies, executing the policies, or helping to propagate these narratives that are dividing our country and undermining the foundational fabric that makes us who we are. And yes, they are elected politicians. They are unelected bureaucrats who hold administrative positions in our government. They are many of the talking heads that you might see on some news channels or cable or broadcast television. They are people within, the Googles and the Metas who are carrying out and acting as a tool for the policies and the narratives that the Democrat elite are pushing in our country. They are the George Soroses of the world, those who are funding and pushing these kinds of changes that are so-called progressive changes, but that are actually counterproductive to the well-being and interests of the American people. When you have people who only care about power and who have created, and I've seen this with members of Congress as well, which is why people end up compromising their principles and their conscience to be able to stay in power, is they see their identity as being attached, and their relevance and their ability to matter as a human being on this world as being attached to this title that they hold. And so it exactly.
That's scary.
It is scary and dangerous, because this is the sort of thing that we see in dictators in different parts of the world. The fear of losing that title, that level of importance, that quote unquote respect that they command, not because of who they are, but because of that title and that position, is what is driving the destruction of our fundamental freedoms in America right now.